Sentiment in the junior resource sector has been mostly awful this year. So what did the numbers say? Kai Hoffmann, he is CEO of Soar Financial and Orning. He is also host of the Deutsche Goldmesse being held this month in Frankfurt. Kai, welcome back to Kitco.
Michael, thanks for having me back on. Appreciate it.
Kai, stock prices have been down in the resource sector year to date, although we're seeing a bit of a bounce. What trends are you seeing in financings?
It's a mixed picture on the financing side. It depends a bit on the commodity, but also on the stage of the company. Overall, it's not too bad. The Orning index is trending around 50 level. We've seen way worse in the past, but it also shows that, or index is including a lot of the flow-through financings right now. Just in November, half the money raised went straight into flow-through financings. It's a Canadian tax special model because there are also some changes coming to the tax system in Canada next year. So there might be a bit more money being dumped into the flow-through system here in the next few weeks. So pay attention to that, and pay attention to the premiums that companies are offering in that regard, because anything below a 30% premium is a bit iffy in my opinion, because the jurisdictions allow for way more or way higher premiums, although they are coming down. Charity flow-through premiums in Quebec shouldn't be below 70 to 80%, for example, or in general, flow-through premiums in any province shouldn't be below 30, because that means at the back end, you're getting a massive discount to the actual share price. And pay attention to that so you don't have to be eating those shares in the market as a retail investor.
Talk a little bit about more of those pockets, maybe company stage, for instance, or precious versus critical mineral. Where do we see that funds are going? I will say, just to add on to that, Kai, it's a little bit surprising because, talking in the industry, they've just been saying it's just been awful right now in terms of being able to raise funds.
It depends on who you talk to. Right.
Yeah.
If you talk to the grassroots explorers, they are hurting right now. There is no money for them. Doesn't matter what commodity. If you haven't put a drill hole in, unless you have a sexy project and an amazing management team, you're not getting any money from the market right now. If somebody comes to me and says, Kai, I want to drill 1,000 meters next year, I'm raising money right now. It's like, please go away. To be honest, it sounds rude, but there's no value being created. If you see companies trying to raise below maybe $1.52 million, ask very specifically what they're doing with that money, right? Because as a shareholder, you want money to be value to be created so that the share price can eventually develop in a positive direction. Also, commodity-wise, there is a bit of a bifurcation as well. Although, actually, no, let me rephrase that. We've seen a bifurcation earlier in the year, but that has reversed now that the lithium is sort of under pressure, as some of your viewers might be following the lithium price developments. We're only at $15,000 a ton right now. We used to be trading at above $70,000 a ton, so the price has completely crumbled, and so has the interest in lithium stocks. The James Bay explorers are being completely destroyed in the market right now. They've tumbled. A lot of companies are way below before they even announced James Bay projects, and that's what we're seeing also in the financings. It's back to gold. Back to the good old trusted precious metal. It's attracting a lot of the attention right now, or most of the attention. Even copper is being neglected due to recession fears.
Let's step back and take a macro view, Kai. I want to have you on and then ask you about kind of a broader perspective. There's been so much focus on the Federal Reserve. When is there going to be that pivot? We see that stocks are bouncing off of that good CPI number. But frame it out for us as well, too. You were based in Vancouver. You've now been back home in Frankfurt for a handful of years. What's the European economy look like, or what do the economies look like outside of North America?
Not as rosy, if you want to believe the official numbers. Let's be honest here. Germany officially is in a recession. We've had negative GDP growth for a couple of quarters now. But the interesting thing is nobody really talks about it. So that might be a bit of a difference here as well. Like when you go out with the neighbors, you have a conversation. The recession is not really top of mind. Not everybody's feeling it. And all we're seeing is headline news. Right, Germany is back actually as the third largest economy in the world again, thanks to a weak yen. We've been able to push our way past Japan, but other than that, like Europe is fighting the good fight against the U.S. But in all instances, we are definitely in a weaker position. We started raising rates much later. The question is now who's pivoting first. My money is on the US, or actually almost on the EU, if you want to go with that theory. Because if we pivot first, it shows weakness. The euro might actually go back to parity against the US dollar. So there's just not a lot of signs pointing in a positive direction in the EU right now. Although we're not the biggest wheel in the or the biggest cog in the wheel here right now. I think geopolitics are dictating more of the headlines, especially in the gold space or in the resource space. So it's something we'd have to pay more attention to.
I want to go back talking about in your previous response in terms of the return to gold. I've been noticing through your channel that you've been doing a ton of macro interviews with gold-focused guests, I would say. Peter Schiff, Adrian Day being some of those. What have been some of the key takeaways? What have you kind of noticed that people are talking about in the gold space? What are going to be some key trends, Kai?
Our idea of the channel is to discuss the macro to understand the micro. So why are the mining stocks hurting, and why is gold still so unloved? Those are the main ideas behind the channel. And speaking with Peter Schiff, but also Danielle DiMartino Booth and Brent Johnson is really, really interesting to hear their opinions and their views, because depending on who you speak to, we might already be in a recession in the U.S. Based on job report numbers, and the jobless numbers or the unemployment numbers have jumped quite significantly. From 3% to almost 4% now, and that is a big indicator. Of course, GDP growth is a bit staggering, so people are confused as to why the U.S. is growing so fast. But of course, if you look at how much money is being thrown at the economy, being at the CHIPS Act or the Inflation Reduction Act, it's not a surprise that the economy is kicking into higher gear and seems quite resilient. When it comes to gold, of course, every gold commentator, if you go to a gold conference and interview them, for example, they're going to say gold is going to the moon, of course, right? And but what they are all saying as well is it needs a bit of a trigger, meaning to get generalists back into the market. It'd be great to see a $50 to $100 move in a day, which is massive for a 5,000-year-old relic here. But that would attract generalists back to the sector. Mainstream media might jump back on it, and breaking through that all-time high at 2080 might bring a lot more eyeballs back to the gold space and silver space in that regard.
So pick your poison there, Kai. If you're investing in the resource space, what's your most appealing thesis? I guess there's the Robert Friedland camp when you're talking about energy transition, all the money that's going into it. Channeling Rick Rule, you make a bet on management. And then there's also all of what's happening with gold in terms of the Fed might be finally getting away from the ratcheting up of interest rates.
I'm almost getting tired of saying it, but then people are probably tired of hearing it as well. But what's more contrarian than being a gold mining stock investor right now, right? If you look at how the stocks have performed, and we're looking at the gold price, there's a massive divergence. The stocks should be trading a lot higher. GDXJ, leading ETFs here have not moved at all. And at 1980 gold, what is there not to like about mining stocks right now? Of course, sentiment is against you right now, but that is exactly the contrarian indicator that you're looking for. And if you want to take it to the max, if you want to go be a contrarian squared, you should maybe look at copper with a longer time horizon, or even zinc, because the copper price of 360 a pound right now. Copper stocks are struggling as well because of the recession fears that the market is seeing. And if you believe some of the commentators, recession will hit us in April, May next year. If you believe Danielle Martino Booth or some of the indicators we might already be in a recession without already being labeled. So buy those unloved stocks, or look at those unloved stocks, and do your homework, of course.
What's going to be the key development? What are we going to remember 2023 as being, Kai?
It's interesting. A lot of developments, quite a few M&A deals, let me say that way. Newmont bought Newcrest, which is interesting. Glencore just bought a cool asset from Teck as well. So there could be quite a bit of money being recirculated into the or into the markets, the resource and the commodity markets. Newmont Newcrest merger was a $19 billion transaction, and a lot of the big fund managers or the big funds had allocations probably in both Newmont and Newcrest, and they won't be holding both positions added together. So let's say they own 5% of Newmont, 5% of Newcrest. They won't be holding 10% of the new Newmont. It's just too overweight in their portfolio, so they'll have to be shedding some of that position. And that money might get or should get redistributed, in my opinion, and probably trickle down the ecosystem a little bit. We'll go see maybe some of the mid-tier producers benefit from that. And I personally hope it builds some pressure on the mid-tier producers to maybe make some more M&A moves and start adding to it, because the added liquidity might make it more appealing for them to actually pull the trigger on a transaction. Glencore Tech or Glencore Tech deal, which was just announced, I think it was earlier this week or a couple of days ago as we're recording this. Tech is an interesting player, and they own quite a few positions in junior mining companies and junior explorers. So if they really wanted to develop their portfolio, I think they have a toehold in a few interesting assets that might be worth snagging up at these valuations.
Key trends you're looking for over the next 12 months?
Good question. EV revolution, of course, is still a big trend we're looking at, but I think overall we have to follow the macro space and follow what the gold price is doing. We're not far from an all-time high. So if we break through that all-time high at 2070 or 2080, we could add a bit more momentum in the sector and in the commodity race here as well. So I think that is something to watch very, very closely. Don't ask me what the trigger is. Next year, U.S. elections. Will a policy shift potentially push gold prices higher? What will it do to geopolitics? Is there going to be an escalation or de-escalation in the Middle East, for example? Those are things I'm watching quite closely, because the macro, unfortunately, leads to the micro, and that's dictating the sentiment right now.
Kai, lastly, tell us about your show, Deutsche Goldmesse.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, fifth time in person in Frankfurt at the West End Grand. Really looking forward to it. And I'm really surprised at how it's been developing, given the market sentiment we've just discussed as well. I expected maybe some of the companies to cancel or investor registrations to be a bit slower, or at least stay at the level we've seen in May. No, to the contrary, the companies are all coming, and investor registrations are up by 50-60%. It's crazy. I'm excited about that. Trying to figure out what it really means. I was just in Zurich as well at the Precious Metals Summit, and it seemed busy. I didn't hear any complaints from the companies in terms of investor interest. And I think that's being reflected at our conference as well. Maybe some of the value hunters, contrarian investors, you want to call them, or deep value investors are sniffing around the sector now, because we have tax loss selling happening right now as well. So there might be some discounts happening in this space in the next 2 to 3 weeks here. And the investors might be onto something. So we're really excited about that. We have 31 companies join us. And of course, we have 6 fantastic keynotes. Michael Howell, the godfather of liquidity, as he's called in the sector. He's really going to give us a good overview on the macro side, like how is money and liquidity in the markets influencing maybe the gold price and overall market sentiment. Joanna Ponica, fantastic on geology and exploration investments. Warren Gilman, the godfather of risk-free investments in junior exploration stocks. You need to watch and talk to him to understand what I mean by that. Lobo Tiggre, and I'm extremely honored that we'll have the premier of the Yukon join us in Frankfurt as well.
And of course, Kitco will be covering Deutsche Goldmesse as well, so look for coverage on this channel. Kai, thanks for speaking with Kitco.
Michael, thanks so much for having me.
My name is Michael McRae. You're watching Kitco Mining.